All right, let's jump into things. It's 2 to 10, so market's just about to open. Well, metals markets anyway, just about to open in a couple of minutes. Where are we at? Tuesday, 24th of February. So look, I'll start off again, sort of just with metals and particularly with gold here because this thing obviously it's got its big breakout. It's come through this big triangle here. So I've cleared the charts up a little bit because I had sort of liked a little bit. You go in little two minds of that. It's nice to sort of see, back and forth, remember, like, you know what I mean? More or less, it tells a story all the way along, but after a while, it becomes such a sort of scribbly mess, and that you're like, hold on, wait, am I really sort of picking up on anything potentially that's sort of coming out here? So, anyway, sort of strip it back a little bit. We can always sort of draw the things back in, and of course, the good thing about doing that is that if you draw the levels back in, well, you know that they're actual levels that are sort of being sort of adhered to by the market. It's not just, this level was once upon a time something the market was watching. Now it's kind of chopped through it, it's disregarding it, whichever, whatever. Some levels obviously will be reoccurring, which will be sort of major ones, and we can sort of like tap those back in. And that way, sort of like we know that that's always going to be a significant point that the market is going to sort of try and sort of stay above or below, which is obviously this one here, which is that 5100, which was our big sort of breakout number there. Anyway, point being, we got the breakout, sort of came through here. So with this sort of move off the lows here, I covered this the other week just to sort of, so if you're looking this through the lens of, metals bull kind of thing, and you were sort of say, okay, well, here's the bounce. Where's the bounce come to? Well, this is actually around the 38%, I'm pretty sure, if we put this up to here. 38% right on the dot from the lows. And then obviously we've taken out the high. So, using the sort of the fib, of course, we had this kind of initial bounce here back down to 61%. But if we're going through from the low here to the high of the bounces, which was at 51.20, just before we got that last shake sub sort of 4,900, came back and on the 38%. So in our sort of like, three legs that we're sort of really looking at, even though, it's obviously got an internal sort of structure of it all like this, realistically, if we're looking in the sort of idea that, we've got support, we've got resistance, come back, found support, tackle the highs, which is what we've seen here, and now we're breaking through. And this one's obviously gone through here. So we're in this sort of structure, this leg of the structure at the moment. From here, you obviously sort of let this run out till we sort of find a bit of resistance. We look for a proper sort of back test, which is most likely going to be coming around this level. Maybe we'll get to sort of where this may sort of come to here, and then potentially look for a continuation higher. Again, these are just sort of like, to show the idea of the direction, not to say that these are going to be the size of the moves. It's just sort of, obviously sort of exaggerating the idea of it all here. But point being is that we have got the breakout. So I'll get all the stuff off here. Interesting sort of notes with these sort of things. You get a couple of retests with things generally, and they'll generally come in the form of sort of lower time frames and then a higher time frame. And the higher time frames are the ones that are really sort of going to count with stuff. So we drag this across here first because this is a little bit of a previous sort of support resistance that we had. It's right up into this zone here now. So 52.30. It's actually pushing up a little bit into it. Just on the open one, just opening up now actually. As you can see, oh, this hasn't actually, here we go. Yeah, 32, it's too many numbers around here. 52.40, so moving up through there. But what I want to sort of say is this little breakout here, which is that previous little high before we had the shake back down. If you look where the market sort of came back to, tested it pretty much to the actual cent, actually may have even come in $1 above it. And then market, boom, shot off again straight away. And this is because, people are sort of really sort of going, look, you know what, I'll stay short. There was a good argument for short side with metals coming down here before we had, latest sort of turn of events with Iran and all this kind of stuff going on. Excuse me. But, the fact is that sort of like, people were short. Okay, you don't necessarily bail on the first time it pops through. This is where they hit all the stops. Came back down through here, so like a little bit of a fluff around through Asia, came back down, retested this part. People closed their short positions, and by closing their short positions, they're buying back the positions, which gives you that sort of springboard move that sort of comes right off that level here and bang and move through, and then obviously on it sort of went through the rest of the session. It was a bit of a sort of chop through sort of Europe. It wasn't really a great deal of commitment, but as you can see, this is around 1:30 here when sort of the US is really sort of opening up, and that sort of just opened up, and that just went bang and took off, and away it sort of went, and up and up it goes kind of thing. I was thinking maybe you might have sort of got a little bit of a wedge. It was sort of resisting here for a little bit, but again, same sort of deal here that we've got. Anybody that may have caught this sort of short side here, well, they got blown out here. They got the chance to get out for zero. What did they do? Out straight away. Big springboard back up to the top over here. So look, it is opening up. It's opening up strong. I don't think we've sort of had any sort of like further kind of changes overnight. We've actually only just got to catch up with the data, with the news. Just going to actually sort of manage a few positions. Be back in 2 seconds. All right, so kicking on. So yeah, we are coming up into a little sort of area that, as I said, if we go on a higher time frame, we can see that. Zoom this out a little bit. We have sort of seen on the way down, this was a little bit of a sort of resistance. So obviously we got this big sort of shake down here. We bounced up, sellers moved in, pushed it back down. We've also got over here that, it did play its part as a little bit of a sort of a little landing pad to sort of then leg up into that last, last sort of, sorry, catch my breath here, too many coffees. Not enough coffee, maybe. Into that last all-time high kind of period there. So, this is a little bit of point of interest. We've seen it, the market respected a couple of times. We're coming back into it now. It won't necessarily hold, but it is just a point of interest for it at the moment. So we could sort of line anything up there. So I'm not really sold on this line, actually, to be honest. I think this is more just let the market do what it needs to do. And wait to sort of see how this sort of plays out. But we are in that sort of whole sort of turnaround Tuesday thing. As to whether that is going to have any effect on these sort of metals at the moment, as I said, I don't think we've had any sort of further escalations or anything overnight. I know the equity markets over in the US had a bit of a hit, which is obviously a risk-off kind of thing. We'll see it in a couple of other markets as well. Aussie's a little bit on the back foot. I mean, it's still right near the highs, but sort of moving along there. The dollar is fighting its way up there as well. So again, while the dollar is fighting its way up, it's not slowing the metals. The metals are obviously sort of punching quite hard here. But what I did sort of find yesterday, that was that as the dollar was moving up, like the dollar sold off early, as the dollar was moving up, gold was also moving up, but the dollar would just have a little bit of a pullback and gold would just accelerate on those little pullbacks. And that's sort of saying to me that obviously they're still buying both of them. They're buying the dollar and buying gold. But as soon as we see people waver in the idea that gold might actually, the dollar might roll over or may have a little bit of a pullback, very quickly are those flows adding on to the people that are already buying metals. And you see that sort of move just then. It didn't waste time. Sort of any time we had a little bit of a pullback in the dollar, gold accelerated a little bit there. So yeah, look, we are up into a point of interest over here. Look, above that, I guess, like if we're sort of looking at these little levels over here, maybe a little bit of a sort of area just over here where we are. So around sort of 5,300, which I think I've actually sort of seen a couple of people sort of touting around those 5,300 levels. How are we going over here? We're past the 61. That might be around that sort of, see with the fib. Down on this one here. So yeah, we've got the fib coming around 5,339 for the 78%. We've got a little bit of a sort of zone through here, potentially just on the top side here. So yeah, I would say look, any sort of clear break above. We're only at 540 or so at the moment. A sort of clear break above here, I wouldn't be surprised if a little bit of another $50 sort of push up over there. Though, as I said, look, it is air quotes turnaround Tuesday. See if we can see any sort of correction. Look, I think to get us a bit of a correction, this isn't a major zone line here, but maybe potentially we could start to see a little bit of a channel here. I wouldn't be looking for anything sort of too solid in terms of pullbacks at the moment. till we sort of see some sort of change in headlines and situation with Iran. They're supposed to be having a meeting over on Thursday. I was listening to these guys talk last night, and they were saying, maybe they'll give them a little bit of an attack prior to sort of show them that they're serious. I don't know about that. I think that'd kind of derail things. I don't think sort of they're necessarily at the point where they're like, hey, I mean, they've sent all the trucks, all the aircraft carriers and the jets and everything over there. I think that's the kind of sort of flex. I don't think they need to sort of really give them a quick little bombing just to really show that they're serious. I think it's the US people are going to know that they're serious. Anyway, let's get this out of the way. So, look, very much definitely in sort of bullish mode. This big breakout here was very big, sort of a very important point. So, as long as it's above sort of 51.20, it's very much sort of buy the dips kind of status. As to how high overall, look, I can't really sort of say. I mean, look, you do have levels above here. If we sort of add a couple of these other ones here, we can sort of start to get an idea about where the market has valued it previously on the way up. As to sort of whether this comes up into this whole part, don't really know. I mean, from a large sort of structural sort of point, we are in a make or break area because this is sort of basically showing its hand. So from this point here, above 51.20, you're either double top, higher high, or lower high. So you really are in this sort of point over here at the moment. But as to sort of this turning around from, 5,300, 54, 54.40, these kind of things. I mean, you're just going to have to let the market sort of dictate that kind of thing. If we have a look, it's a little bit overbought on the 4 hour, but as you can see, it's still just dribbling and grinding up to the top side there. What's daily sort of have for us here? Yeah, daily's still got a little bit of room to run with it. So, this thing, particularly if it catches on here now, top side moves here. We do have that smaller zone, which obviously doesn't show up on the daily here. But daily wise, 53.84 is the body fill, which I always sort of find to be a fairly decent sort of target with these kind of things. As you can see, it's really cleared this area here now. Quite a clear move up. This is on the daily. Quite clear straight moves through this zone previously. So I wouldn't be surprised if this thing catches on that we do see another, I don't know, potentially sort of, what's that, about another 100, 150 bucks or something to the top side here. So it's got the RSI to support it if it does want to move a bit higher. All right, moving on. Have a look at silver. And silver, look, it's obviously sort of got this nice little break from this triangle through here. As the fact that it broke this way, apart from the idea that obviously we had the sort of the change in headlines slash macro yada yada kind of sort of stuff to sort of push it here. It's obviously, well, not obviously, but it doesn't look to be performing as well at this point than gold. So it's really up into its make or break area. This sort of this sort of like daily resistance level around this sort of 88.70 area here. RSI still got room to move. This is on the daily. So should this thing sort of pick up and open up here, you'd watch out for 92 because this is an area obviously where we had the sort of sellers pushing it down. So it could still potentially turn into a little bit more of a sort of a range play here at the moment. I know there's a lot of people sort of saying, oh, the COMEX is going to run out of silver and all this kind of sort of stuff. Look, it's beyond my sort of pay grade as to sort of how this is going to happen. I don't believe that that's really sort of the case. I know it's a good sort of justification narrative that sort of people say, oh, they're going to run out of silver. Yeah, we'll see how we go. I think if that was truly the case, like they're talking about in March, sorry, so 1 week away, and it's still trading all the way down here from its highs, is what I'm sort of talking about here. So we clear this up a little bit as well. Cool. Bit cleaner. So yeah, we can see quite easily where the sort of daily structures here needs to hold above this area, so break above, solidly above, sort of like 89.50. A continuation of this. It's got a bit of an RSI here. The bodies are sort of still a little bit of space in it here, but as I said, there's air quotes turnaround Tuesday wants to make use of this and not sort of see a bit of a push back down under here because we have seen the sellers here. We're seeing the sellers obviously not necessarily push it back from here, but the market is sort of stalling at this point. What I was going to show is this, which is showing that we're still only just underneath the 38%. Whereas if you compare it with gold, gold's way up towards the 78, between 61 and 78% of the recovery. So you can see that gold, obviously, of the two, is sort of recovering a little bit better than silver at this point. Though, if these things continue, silver and gold, remember when they were running like this, it was really kind of like a back and forth kind of thing. So we would see gold take the lead, then you'd see silver play catch up, gold would take a breather, and vice versa. So, it's just about, it wasn't sort of necessarily are you in metals or not in metals, it was just like which metal are you in at that point. Um, so the whole sort of idea that, sort of comics and it's going to run out of silver, I don't know. Maybe I'm just putting my head in the sand and saying it's a bit of a tinfoil hat sort of moment. We'll see how we go. But certainly, I think sort of while it's above sort of 84.50 for the moment, I think that's got a reasonable chance to sort of just be by the dip on this here. So put a little zone in through here, which is obviously that previous sort of daily open. So a little bit of move down here. So look, I wouldn't be surprised to see a little bit of a pushback from this zone. As you can see, it's sort of slowly drifting up into it. But I think sort of like pretty much sort of around this area here, we may see some sort of pushback. It doesn't look like the RSI is still turning. It's still in that overbought area, but it is sort of pulling back here a little bit. It needs to really sort of continue and power, see a strong open, and really sort of charge up through this zone. That'll get the RSI pushing up a little bit higher, justify the move, and then you can be looking up around, between sort of say 90.50 and 92. But I wouldn't be surprised if we do see some sort of, at least sort of chilling of stuff around this area over here, unless we sort of see more of a sort of escalation with the Iran situation. That really seems to be the big sort of driver. Yes, we got the tariff kind of stuff, but to a certain degree, I think the tariff thing's kind of like come and gone. I think the Iran situation is probably the bigger mover at the moment. So any sort of moves back, as I said, above that sort of 54. Got too many lines on this now as well. Above that sort of what do we say? 84.40, 84.60, that kind of area here. I imagine this just to be a sort of buy the dip kind of situation, but I wouldn't be surprised if we do get a little bit of a pushback here before having a second attempt to run through this zone, and then a close above sort of 89.70 or so. That should sort of confirm that you're probably going to see this thing move a little bit higher, and certainly above 92, 92.12. All right, let's tick on. So we got the dollar, and the dollar very much sort of kicked back to life yesterday. So on open, we had a sort of bit of a sort of shake, sort of early continuation of some of that sort of sell down on Friday, and this was after the tariff decision. We had a bit of sort of shake consolidation yesterday. Opened and just dropped like a stone. We did have a zone around here, as you can see. It sort of pretty much respected that zone right to the sort of point, to the center pretty much. And we had a nice little sort of what's called a high heel bottom on these ones here, which I put up a post on X with this sort of stuff. Because it's a bit of a silly sort of name, but these are actually very good reversal patterns. As you can see here, basically sort of, where's the little drawery thing? This thing here. So what you're kind of looking for is a little sort of drift up, fast shoot down, which makes that kind of like heel stiletto-y bit of whatever the shoe is. And then, whoops, it's not a little drawery thing. Here we go. So that's part of your shoe, that's your little stiletto-y bit there, and then that's your breakout part there. So obviously pushing through here is your sort of confirmation. And I sort of put this up actually on X because, as again, despite the stupid name, they are very good reversals. And the idea is basically, if you get onto a lower time frame, you can see it was moving up, moving up, moving up. It was looking good, looking good. Then there was no catalyst. This is a big part of this thing as well. When you're sort of looking around, and this is why you need to pay attention to headlines and these kind of things as well, because there was no catalyst other than sort of the larger picture of what was happening to make this thing just drop like this. And then, okay, no catalyst, market buys it straight back up. You start to see that sort of little heel part as it comes out the top there. You can see that sort of setup is playing out. and boom, and it moves up to the top side there. So it's quite a good sort of little sort of reversal pattern. And obviously the reversal there was quite strong, sort of coming through. As to sort of the bigger, sort of broader picture, it is obviously still in this kind of little rollover kind of mode. Maybe we're getting a little bit of a resistance. Whoops, I'll leave that there anyway, sure. We're getting a little bit of a line up through here. Not nothing major real. Look, I'll keep it there just for the moment. I'm not really hanging a great deal on that. Certainly above 98.10, that kind of area. That's where you need to see it above to see things move up a little bit more. As I said yesterday, sort of like once we sort of saw, this move that coming back down through here around that sort of 130 period, that's when gold took its next level up. And this is what I was talking about yesterday, that, sort of as we were seeing, the dollar push back up like this through here, as you can see, this is through Europe. So if you put them side by side, you can see, oops, here. So you can see the lines line up sort of on the left and the right through there. Where are we at here? Yeah, so through this period here on the right chart, you can see dollar moving up quite strongly. You can see at the same time on the left chart that gold is really just sort of sitting sideways. It was kind of like, and this is what I'm saying at the moment. This is why it's sort of important to see how these things are working together. Is that they're buying, they're obviously not selling gold at this point while they're buying the US dollar, but the second that they start to sell the US dollar off and it starts coming back down here, gold takes advantage, and that's when gold uses its time to push off over here. Meaning that basically, if we sort of see a continuation of, let's go back to one chart here, if we see a continuation of sort of strength with the dollar, while the dollar's moving up, we're going to see gold not necessarily pull back and sort of thing. It's going to be muted, in my opinion, the advance with it all. Though, if we do see the dollar fail, then that could be the indication that gold's definitely going to be going quite a bit, quite a bit higher. But I think sort of very much at the moment, sort of like, dollar came back, tested where it needed to, which is obviously this zone back over here as well. Came back to life very strong, sold into through US, and really kind of back to where it started yesterday. So it was very much, as you can see, down, up, bang, boom. So pretty much a sort of indecision kind of day for the day, which favors sort of the idea that you probably do have an upside test coming. But I would say certainly, we're starting to see a bit of a make or break, and it's a bit harder because some of these things, particularly with the metals at the moment, while they're just charging high, it's a bit hard to sort of say, hey, look, above here, we'll see a continuation. Below here, we'll see something other than sort of, as I said, those lower levels that I do believe the metals will stay above. I think this is kind of your sort of levels for the dollar at the moment. I think sort of like this is your kind of make or break. So, close below sort of 97.30 or a close above 98.10, and I think that'll be giving us our direction. Certainly, if we do end up breaking to the downside down here, I think that's when we're going to see metals really sort of push and test towards those highs. Just on the dollar before I sort of tick along as well, we did have a couple of headlines from Fed speakers last night, which I think it was, if I recall, it was in the middle of the night, but I'm pretty sure it was from Waller, who was originally one of the sort of dissenters, sort of calling for sort of cuts sooner rather than later. But a couple of the headlines sort of coming out there sort of saying that, that things aren't too bad and that the jobs, if they come in a little bit stronger, could very much sort of sway him more to the hold side of things. So at the moment, the market's, I think, sort of pricing 90% plus of a hold in March. But then, of course, you've got, I think it's June, July kind of thing. I think they're sort of tossing up, going back and forth as to sort of whether they're going to cut around those sort of periods there. So obviously, if they don't cut because they're in a sort of either a cut or hold kind of period, a hold is going to be seen as a sort of more the more hawkish of the sort of decision of the moves from the Fed. And so more talk of that kind of sort of stuff of like, hey, strong job numbers. And obviously, if we do get those sort of strong job numbers, that's going to be seen as quite strong dollar positive. Well, yeah, strong dollar positive kind of sort of data. So I think the jobs numbers are going to be sort of, I mean, the jobs numbers are always going to be quite impactful, but I think certainly at the moment, you know, flipping back between the two sort of mandates, I think that's sort of starting to sort of shape up to be the one that may sort of be impacting the movement a little bit more. We do have a bit more. I think we got PPI at the end of this week. We had PCE last week, which was a bit stronger. So you know the inflation, if it is a bit higher, and strong job numbers, well, again, you play these things out. Strong job numbers means, hey, look, you know what? People are still hiring. They be able to sort of withstand a hike, and inflation, if it is up, requires them to hike. So that could be a sort of bit of a narrative, or a sort of not necessarily a narrative, but like a situation in which a scenario in which we'd see sort of continued dollar strength over the next couple of months. All right, and tick along. We've got Aussie. So yeah, I mean, look, all over the place with this thing. Really, we did get this close up over here, and I was saying, hey, look, if we get a close up over here, you know, it might be sort of something to see a bit of a break. But as you can see, that was on the 30-minute. The 1 hour got the close above here. 4 hour unable to close through, rejects from this level, which has been sort of quite a strong level previously, and we're starting to come back down over here. So I tried to catch a short side over here the other day. I got ripped when it sort of came back up over here. I caught the short side down through this period here. I actually closed out my positions last night because I'm getting kind of sick of it, to be honest. It is very resilient. I thought maybe we would have got a deeper sort of correction through here. But as we keep seeing, it sort of just keeps springing back to life and that. And, you know, this is while, you know, we're potentially sort of about to have, you know, this war kick off and all this kind of thing. But, you know, as you can see, sort of succumbed to it yesterday. But very much at the moment, it's very strong. Look, it's got it's no sort of like sort of shocker because we've got like the RBA is quite hawkish with it all. So it does have that idea that, okay, yeah, it could stay up over here. Certainly, I think a close underneath 70 will open it up to sort of come down here. But I think sort of best thing to do with this thing at the moment is just wait till it actually gets that break. Because this, particularly through last week, as you can see, it's just up, down, up, down, up, down, and very quick. I mean, look at these spikes down here, then sort of coming down, looks great, big solid move down, straight back up, chop. It's just a headache. So I think it's sort of a close above 71 or a close below sort of 70.20. That'll sort of start to give us a little bit more of the direction there. I wouldn't be surprised if we do actually sort of break to the downside now, but as I said, with this one, I think I'll be sort of waiting till we sort of have a little bit more sort of confirmation. Put that there for the candle to go up. Up candle through there. They're the two directions. So a quick one on that. And finally, just with Aussie Yen. So Aussie Yen's come back down and tested this level here again. I think this is getting very close to a sort of make or break area here. From a larger kind of perspective, we do have a lower high coming in. So the emphasis is on structurally back down at 107.80. 108.80 also can sort of confluence with this channel support here. Get this up a little bit. Channel support. I think it's sort of, if this does sort of roll over and break and come down through here, I wouldn't be surprised if we do actually get that move back down to this 107.80 test here. But that does then take you outside the channel. But as we know, sort of with these things, when they do sort of break outside the channels, generally, most likely they are not going to just sort of go bang, bang, and then sort of break down like this. This may be where it does head, but I think there's a good chance it also does that first and tests up the underside of the channel to get anybody that didn't just, people that buy the break but don't put the stops to even or whatever, it comes up here, and then I think a second move down through here. I don't think it's going to be an easy, well, it clearly isn't an easy sort of trade. This is very choppy here as well. But I do think that potentially, if we sort of strip everything away, we do have this larger structure, which has failed to put in a higher high. We have a lower high here, puts the emphasis back on these lows, which is down over here, with the idea that potentially you're going to break through and then sort of end up sort of coming back down to that 106 area. But again, we can see that sort of, you know, get rid of the stuff here on a lower time frame. This little area here, this 108.80, has really proved to be a bit of a sort of a sticking point for the buyers. strong reactions off these moves here. There's another one. There's another one that I was trying to trade the downside here, and then I got stopped out over here, which is quite frustrating. But as you can see, sort of like, coming down, fly straight back up. These charts just mean nothing, or these sort of lines, sorry, mean nothing. I think mainly what you kind of have to sort of resort back to is the fact that, yeah, this is 108.80, give or take a couple of points, is where the buyers are. Once we see a lack of buyers here, we got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 tests into this zone. Another test should break through here, and I wouldn't be surprised if we do sort of come back down, looking at sort of 103, 108 sort of 30s to 107.80s. And then probably see another effort of sort of moving back up to these zones over here. But certainly a little bit of downside should 108.80 break. As you can see on here, this on the lower time frame on the 1 hour, we are sort of starting to sort of roll over with this sort of fan thing. It runs up the underside, makes a new low, break here, test underneath. Like once it breaks, test underneath. Excuse me, coming down over here. So I think mainly just looking for the downside move of that through there. I'm not really looking for buys at this stage. All right, so I think that's about it. I don't think we have much data coming out today either. No, we're pretty flat on the data. China's back today, actually. So, yeah, we'll see how that impacts metals markets and that. So they could just get on board and absolutely run it up high. Yeah, look, it opened up and sort of moved a couple of bucks and that, but it kind of seems to be sort of consolidating a little bit here at the moment. So I think we'll wait to sort of see what happens with China at 12, and that should give us a bit more of a direction. All right, that's it from me.